Milton's Paradise Regained was first published in 1671, a fact often highlighted in exam. The volume also included his closet drama Samson Agonistes. So, remembering that pairing is important for your preparation, Milton wrote much of it at his cottage in Chalfont, St. Giles in Buckinghamshire. Compared to Paradise Lost, which runs to 12 books and over 10,000 lines, this poem is shorter, 4 books, just over 2,000 lines. The scholar Barbara K. Luwalski aptly called it a brief epic, and this phrase has been asked in exam. The story begins with Christ's baptism by John the Baptist, after which Satan sets out to tempt him. Jesus retreats into the wilderness for 40 days of fasting, reflecting on his mission. In disguise, Satan first tempts him to turn stones into bread, but Christ rebukes him firmly. Meanwhile, in Book 2, his followers Simon, Andrew, and Mary express concern over his absence. Satan, knowing this contest will be harder than the fall of Adam, prepares his demons for battle. Yet, Jesus resists temptations of hunger, power, and wealth, remaining true to his divine calling. Book 3 raises the theme of earthly glory. Satan mocks Jesus for his lack of worldly achievements, comparing him to conquerors like Alexander the Great. Jesus rejects glory won by violence, insisting his path is one of suffering and obedience. When shown the kingdoms of the world, he entrusts their fate to divine providence. Finally, in Book 4, Satan makes his boldest offer: all the kingdoms of the world in exchange for worship. Christ rejects the offer, declaring his loyalty to God alone. He also turns away from the so-called wisdom of ancient Greece, affirming the truth of the Psalms and prophets instead. With each temptation, Christ emerges victorious, undoing the failure of Adam. The poem closes with angels ministering to him, celebrating his triumph. In contrast to the vast sweep of Paradise Lost, this is a quieter, more focused epic, showing Christ's steadfastness where Adam fell. It completes Milton's grand vision, humanity's fall balanced by redemption through Christ. Milton's Samson Agonistes is a tragic closet drama, published in 1671 alongside Paradise Regained, and this pairing has been noted in exam. The play portrays the final phase of Samson's life after he has been blinded and imprisoned by the Philistines. The parallel with Milton himself is striking. He too was blind when he composed this work. One of the most memorable lines describes Samson's despair, eyeless in Gaza at the mill with slaves. This exact phrase has been highlighted in exam. Decades later, Aldous Huxley borrowed it as the title for his 1936 novel Eyeless in Gaza, a fact also connected in exam contexts. Yet, the drama does not end in defeat. Samson rises above self-pity, regains his strength, and fulfills his role as Israel's deliverer. In a final act of sacrifice, he pulls down the pillars of Dagon's temple, killing himself along with his Philistine captors. This climactic moment has been directly asked in exam, so it's essential to remember. What makes Samson Agonistes unique is Milton's fusion of traditions. He combines Hebrew scripture with the structure of Greek tragedy, a point that examiners often emphasize. Influences from Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides are clear, and Milton even argued that the Bible's classical forms were superior to those of pagan antiquity. In his own words, of the style and uniformity, they only will best judge. This has also been raised in exam. The play explores themes of strength, redemption, and sacrifice, presenting Samson as both tragic hero and spiritual figure. It stands as Milton's last major poetic work, uniting his classical learning, his biblical faith, and his personal struggles into one powerful drama. Milton's sonnet, "When I consider how my light is spent," often referred to as "On His Blindness," is one of his most personal poems. It has been asked in exam, so let's go through it carefully. The poem was written after Milton had gone blind, and it expresses his struggle to reconcile this loss with his faith. He begins by lamenting that his one talent, his gift for writing, feels wasted now that he cannot see. He wonders, doth God exact day labor, light denied? a question about whether God demands service even when the tools for it have been taken away. This line of doubt reflects Milton's initial frustration, something that has been highlighted in exam settings. But the tone shifts as patience answers him. The voice reminds Milton that God does not need man's labor or gifts. What matters is bearing his yoke faithfully. Thousands serve him in action, but those who endure in stillness also serve. The closing words, "They also serve who only stand and wait," have become some of the most frequently quoted lines in English poetry, and they too have been raised in exam. Structurally, the poem is a traditional Italian sonnet with 14 lines, using the rhyme scheme AB, BA, AB, BA, CD, EC, DE. Milton relies heavily on figurative language to express his spiritual struggle, blending personal experience with theological reflection. In the end, the sonnet shows Milton's acceptance. Even in blindness, he can serve God through patience and faith. The poem is a moving testament to resilience, and it continues to be central for both literary study and exam preparation. Milton's poem on Shakespeare was published in 1632 in the second folio edition of Shakespeare's plays. This connection to the second folio has been asked in exam, so keep it in mind. In this brief but powerful tribute, Milton praises Shakespeare as a poet who does not need marble tombs or grand monuments to secure his fame. His works themselves are his monument. The opening lines are striking. "What needs my Shakespeare for his honored bones? The labor of an age in pillared stones." This phrasing has appeared in exam, and it sets the tone of the entire poem. Milton insists that Shakespeare's poetry has already built him a live-long monument greater than any pyramid or tomb. He portrays Shakespeare's verse as effortless, flowing in easy numbers, yet leaving deep impressions on the hearts of readers. These lines are compared to oracles carrying divine weight, so much so that readers are stunned into stillness, made marble with too much conceiving. By the end, Milton declares that Shakespeare's poetic tomb is so splendid that even kings would envy it. The message is clear. Shakespeare's true memorial is not stone, but the enduring power of his art. This little poem is significant not only as Milton's tribute to Shakespeare, but also as one of the earliest major poetic memorials to him. For exam purposes, remember its publication in the second folio and those famous opening lines which are often quoted in test questions. Wordsworth's sonnet London 1808 is one of his most powerful political poems, and it has been asked in exam. Here, the poet calls upon the spirit of John Milton, longing for his moral strength in an age of national decline. The opening cry is unforgettable: "Milton, thou shouldst be living at this hour, England hath need of thee." These lines have appeared in exam questions, so they're essential to memorize. Wordsworth laments that England has become a fen of stagnant waters, a society corrupted and selfish, where even its institutions, altar, sword, and pen, no longer uphold their sacred duties. He begs Milton to return, to restore manners, virtue, freedom, and power. In the second half of the sonnet, Wordsworth turns to praise. Milton's soul, he says, was like a star and dwelt apart, shining in purity and independence. His voice was as vast as the sea, majestic, free, yet filled with cheerful godliness. Importantly, Milton combined grandeur with humility, fulfilling even the lowliest duties with grace. This sonnet is a perfect example of Wordsworth's use of the past to critique the present. By invoking Milton, he calls for a revival of moral clarity and national spirit. For your preparation, remember its key opening lines and the way Milton is described as both majestic and humble, a model for England's renewal.